first of all, happy birthday, Dad. I wish that I could be in Baton Rouge and celebrate with you, but I hope y'all having fun at the camp, and I can't wait to see you and give you a birthday hug next time I do see you. So, you might wonder where Aaron and I are sitting right now, and we have a fun story to share with you. So, in February, Aaron and I decided that we needed to hang out and wanted to go on a fun adventure. And
I wanted to plan it. I wanted details, when and where, what we were doing.
Yeah, and I said, we don't need a plan, because Dad, you know how I hate making plans. And I know this is really out of character for me, but I met somebody at a coffee shop. Crazy, I know, right? And his name is Chris, and he said he's a bladesmith, and I thought that sounded really, really cool, because I'd never met a bladesmith before. And I thought it'd be fun to see the shop and see what he did and learn a little bit about metallurgy, which I didn't even know was a word, actually, till we started working. And so, yeah, we showed up on, so that was a Monday that we met, and we showed up on that Friday, actually, to see the shop.
And then from there we started.
Yeah.
Well, we didn't start at that time. We saw the shop, and I was blown away just by the craftsmanship of the knives. Chris showed us all of his knives that he's made, that he still has, that he's trying to sell, and they're beautiful. They are all very unique, each of them individually. They're crafted by hand. They're just so cool, and we were just taken away by it. And you don't typically get a chance to work with metal in your day-to-day lives. It's kind of like the final frontier of craftsmanship. It takes so much energy and knowledge to work with metal, and here we were standing amidst a bladesmith who daily works with metal, this elusive material that is around us all the time, but we never get to actually build anything with it. And Collyn was just standing in the shop, and it's like a light bulb came on her eyes. It's just like
the whole time I was thinking, gosh, my dad would love this so much. He's got all sorts of crazy power tools, probably some you would like to add to your collection. And yeah, I just kept thinking of you and how much I'd like to show you the shop. And then it occurred to me, I remembered that you had a birthday coming up. And I don't know, just getting to hear about the process of making a knife and just kind of all that went into it. Just how long it took. I mean, Chris was talking to us about, just so much time and so much hard work goes into making one. And I kind of had this thought that getting to make one for you would be a really neat experience. For a lot of reasons, because it's something I know nothing about, so really neat learning experience. Something definitely outside of my comfort zone, just because it's so foreign to me. But then also just the time that went into making this thing was a lot.
We spent a lot of time after classes. She'd pick me up from off campus, and we'd come over here for a couple hours and come back the next day, and we'd spend hours over here working on the knife. It was just endless.
Yeah, and it's funny because Chris originally said, it would take about 30 hours, and Chris and I were doing some rough math the other night, and between the two of us, it was like well over 100 hours spent, and again, that's an estimate, but every day I felt like I learned so much that I wrote down just every single step and every single process. So we'll talk about the process in just a second. But yeah, so it took a lot of time. And so basically, I don't know. And so I knew that it would take a lot of time going into it, and a lot of hard work. And so my thought, my hope was that I really, I wanted to show you just that I love you a lot. And there's no way on earth I can ever thank you or I don't know, even just express what you mean to me. I knew I was gonna cry. I said this in the car. I was like practicing, and I didn't cry at all, so it was good. But yeah, I love you a lot, and so this is just a very, very small token, a little sacrifice for me to show you yeah, just what you mean to us, to me, to Aaron too, because he's a very integral part of the whole process, obviously.
I don't know how I got dragged into this. Well, I wanted to hang out. I wanted an adventure, and a month or so later,
yeah, here we are.
We're finishing our adventure.
It's good not to have plans. Great things happen.
Yeah.
So yeah, you want to talk about how we made this thing?
We should go into it now.
Okay, so I will say what started out as a sacrifice of love, if you will, really turned into an obsession for both Aaron and I.
Yeah.
We went to lunch with his roommate, and this happened many times. The most specific time, we're at lunch, and Aaron and I are just like talking like nerds about the making of this thing and all these words that most people don't know.
My vocabulary is expanded by 100 words of just metallurgy and knifemanship and bladesmithing and everything.
Yeah, and then we have to like remind each other to stop talking because no one else has any idea what we're talking about. Yeah, or cares.
People, no, people care, but they don't. I'll say tang, which is a very common word, but people are just like, I don't know what it is.
Yeah. So we started out. We picked just the first day. All we did was like pick out what piece of steel we were going to use, as well as what kind of wood we were going to use, and we looked at some beautiful, beautiful wood. But we decided on
desert ironwood, and it's it's just like a and you.
Oh, sorry. Oh, I didn't know it was me. And it's one of the densest woods.
No. It is one of the most dense woods in the world. We picked it because it was, or Collyn mostly was picking it, but it was just beautiful piece of wood, and it wasn't even shined up or anything, but just the way it was, you could just see the marbling on it. It was just so pretty, and it was very dense, heavy. Just this block of wood was like it felt like a piece of metal in your hand because it was so heavy and dense. And we think we just kind of arbitrarily found a piece of metal that was a decent shape, and it was originally a triangle, and it wasn't. It just looked like a piece of scrap metal, and that's where it began. We the first night, I think, did we take that home?
No, we didn't take it home that night, I don't think.
Okay.
I didn't.
I didn't either.
Yeah.
But it just, that's how it began.
Yeah, and it was, and I guess here I could talk about, so it's, most knives that you've probably had are stainless steel, and this is high carbon steel, and so the way that you have to take care of it is differently. So it'll hold an edge for a really, really long time, but it will rust, and so you have to oil it regularly, so that it doesn't rust. But I can talk to you about that later. And so, okay, so we wrote down everything so that we would explain well, just what we did first. So first we forged, and the forge that we have, I talk about it like it's ours, Chris has, the steel is forgeable around like 1500, 1600-ish degrees, and it's a charcoal forge, and you, obviously you heat up your metal, and you have your tongs and your anvil and your hammer, and you just pound it.
And when there's many reasons for forging. When we first got here and Chris was going over the process with us, I had no idea why you needed to forge. I was like, oh, why can't you just cut out the metal from the piece of steel we have and just buff the edges and make a knife out of it? Well, there's a little bit more to it than that. You forge for several reasons. We took the triangle shape and started heating it up, and what you do by forging is you shape it, and you get a rough shape of the knife. And we took it from the triangle and stretched it out with different hammers, different kind of striking, and we stretched it out, flattened it out, stretched it out, flattened it out, shaped it, hit the sides, kept just moving metal. Every hit you're moving metal, and it's got to go somewhere. So you always are having to think, well, where is it going to go whenever I hit this? But before you put it back in the forge, you have to flatten it out and make sure it's all straight and proper before you go and heat it again. And Luna wants to talk about knife forging too. Ow.
And the cool thing about forging, rather than stock removal, which would be how we just cut it, is you don't waste any metal. And so that piece of steel that we started with is the same piece of steel for all intended purposes, you know, that we started with. And so it's a neat way not to have any waste, and to feel like you're in the Middle Ages, which you don't get to, you know, have that experience all the time.
And one of the more important things about the forging process is it also strengthens the steel.
Yeah.
You're taking the steel and you're mixing up all of the lines and the structures in the steel, and by doing that it creates a stronger bond between them all. And so you're doing this over and over and over again, and it in turn at the end you've taken a strong piece of steel and made it stronger.
Yeah, you're changing the nature of the metal, as Chris would say. And it's very, very difficult. And so Chris did help us a lot in that process, just because I'm really thankful steel only glows for a couple of seconds, because I could only hit it for a couple of seconds before my arm got real tired real fast. Yeah. Okay, so after it comes out of the forge, it's really bumpy, and technically those are called hills and valleys. And so the grinder was our best friend for many, many days. And so we finished the steel on 600 grit, but we started at 36, and we did, you know, everything in between. And so
what's up to 36?
60, 80,
100. 220, 320,
yeah,
400,
600.
And that was just the first time.
Yeah.
That was before anything else. And but at 36 is where we took it. Well, we took it from the forge, and we did cut the like the false edge. We cut
the general shape.
We cut a little bit off for the false edge at the top, and also the main edge to get that swoop in it. And
yeah, we cut that off with a bandsaw.
With the bandsaw. Then we took it to the grinder, and we ground, and so we smoothed all the surfaces on the big side of the blade and on the small edges with 36, and made everything smooth and flat for the first time. And took it all the way up, made it nice and shiny.
Yeah.
And then we put the finger rests.
Oh yeah.
Well, we filed those
down. Yeah, that's what's next. So technically you could do things without any power tools at all. And we wanted to kind of learn all the different techniques, and so hand filing was something else that we worked with. Basically just a big metal file that likes to give you calluses and destroy your hands. And pretty tedious, but you know, you put this steel in the vice grip and then file it out.
That's where I felt most connected with the steel. Besides forging, is you're actually taking and just with this other metal object, and you're just slowly each stroke you're seeing little flakes of metal fall off, and it's just ever so tedious. Yeah. But you have a very acute control over what you're doing and what you're not doing. So
it's crazy. Yeah, it's like you're covered in this like fine metal dust that you got off, which is pretty cool. And then let's see. Okay, yeah, and then we went to the 120 grit on the grinder. So it was a really long process of taking it from 36 to 600. So like we took it to 600 like the last day. Like, that was like one of the last things we did. So throughout it, as we ground out more and more, we went up with the grit. So then we ground it on 120. And it's really cool. I don't know, I feel like I learned so much about steel, and it's fascinating, and I know you already know this, and you probably did too, but just how quickly water like cools it down, like almost immediately. So on the grinder, you know, when you're working or doing different things, it will get really hot, so you're constantly going back and forth between dunking it in the water, grinding it, dunking it in the water, grinding it.
You're holding it in your hands, so you can feel how hot it is. And it's also dangerous to get it too hot, because if you overheat it, then you'll ruin the structure of the steel.
Yeah.
So you want to keep it at a nice temperature. And sometimes when I was doing that, the water would be cold, and so then I'd have a cold hand, but I would be able to tell too late when it was too hot. I'd burn myself with the metal.
Yeah, you know, I was using the analogy of if you put a frog in a pot and it's already boiling and the frog like jump out, but if you like heat it up really, really slowly, like the frog doesn't notice that it's getting hot and so it dies. Have you heard that? No, okay, Chris made fun of me for that too, because like, oh, that sounds like something from the bayou, you know. So whatever, I'm sure you know that, Dad. But yeah, whatever. And so, let's see. Oh yeah, I thought this was really cool. So, you know, as we change the nature of the steel, so it actually becomes magnetic, and so this steel that's coming off, it's being removed when you're at the grinder, actually gets stuck to all sorts of things, like to the end of your tang and all different things. So I don't know, I thought that was
little tiny metal
really cool.
fibers that kind of build little lattice structures and poke out at things.
Yeah, it was really neat. And so, let's see. Oh my gosh, the day we got new belts was really exciting. So the belts that we used were really just worn down, and so on Monday 3/18 we got new belts, and that was super exciting day.
Wow.
Yeah. Which is funny, it doesn't seem like that long ago.
That seemed like yesterday.
Yeah. And then we kept using the hand files, and then let's see. Okay, and then we cut the guard and the pommel, and so those are the...
What's a guard and pommel?
Yeah, those are the two pieces of metal on the end and on the front, on either side of the handle. And we cut those, those are mild steel, which just means it's steel that has a low amount of carbon. And we cut those on the bandsaw in just, squares. And we had those... Yeah, we had those for a while before we did anything with them. Because then we kept, then we just kept grinding. Grinding took a really long time. And then, let's see, so after we cut our gardener pommel, that is when we did the heat treat. I feel like this is moving so quickly.
I know.
This is, like, everything we're talking about, like, it took so long to do. And sometimes it was really rewarding and you could see what was happening really quickly, but most of the time it was very slow, very tedious. You couldn't even, like, tell that you're making any difference at all.
What did we do today? We worked for 3 hours and we have no visible evidence of what we actually did.
Exactly. And so then... so then we did our heat treat, and that's just to make the steel really hard.
When you heat treat it, you wrap it in a clay wrap. And so we took some powdered clay and mixed it with water and added some very special ingredients that Chris won't tell us what.
He won't tell us.
Spices.
He won't tell us what it is. He'll just tell us what it does.
What it does.
And what it adds.
It looks
to the
like
metal.
dirt.
It looks just like dirt. And Aaron was even going to dump...
Things look like dirt when you grind them.
I was about to, when he told me to hand him the bucket with it in, I was about to pour it out and then hand it to him because I thought he wanted to mix the clay in it, but he actually wanted the contents of it, so we give him a hard time about that. We believe that it's special sauce and herbs and spices, but...
no, but it has silica and, let's say, vanadium. I'm saying that right? How do you say it?
It adds those things.
It adds those things. So it isn't those things. It adds those things. And so that gives it durability and hardness. And so those are just things that we mixed into the clay.
And then you have the clay. It's maybe 1/8 or 1/4 inch thick around the entire blade, and you can move away clay on certain areas of the blade. And what you do by doing that is whenever we heat treat it, which is just putting it back into the forge and heating it and then cooling it down in a liquid medium, is certain areas will cool slower or more quickly than others.
Well,
but when you cool it, it cools at a different speed.
There you go.
And so the blade, because you want it to hold the edge and you want it to be the firmest part of the blade, it's the hardest. And so we took away the clay on the blade edge of the knife, but the back and the tang all remained covered in the clay, so it would harden slower and be less brittle. And the reason for that is because you want that area to, whenever you're torquing and using the knife, to be a little more flexible. If you weren't, you could over torque it, overuse it, and it could potentially break. So by keeping that blade hard, it holds the edge better. It's a stronger piece, but the foundation, the rib, is softer, and it can fluctuate a little more.
And I think that's one of my favorite things, is because, before I would just look at a piece of steel and I would think this whole thing is exactly the same. I wouldn't have known there was literally any difference. But yeah, we didn't even really heat the tang in the heat treat. It sat outside of the forge, because that's the part that we want to keep the softest, because it's the most torque. And so I don't know. was one of the coolest things to me, is just getting to learn about the actual nature and the properties of steel when you're finished. It's all different. There's all a method and a reason behind, why what part is like what.
And so when it's done with it, so when you're heat treating it, you put it in the forge, but then to cool it down, you put it in different types of liquid to cool it down. But if you put it in water will vaporize too quickly. It'll just create like a steam barrier between the knife and the water. It doesn't do an effective job. So we use peanut oil because its flash point is very high, so it won't ignite too easily. And it surrounds the knife better than water would. It doesn't evaporate like water would around it. So it helps cool it down quickly. So
That's called a quench.
Quench, yeah. And but then it also leaves the knife kind of scarred looking. It really it colors the knife. And also with the clay you can put certain designs in which we ended up taking off, but you could have left it with this kind of dark charred look, and it's really a unique look on the knife if that's what you want to go for. And Chris has some that are like that, and they look really cool like that.
And that's when I knew you can. Well, when you get it, you'll see there's an F imprinted into it. And so right before we did the heat treat, the last thing we did was bang that F. It was a stamp that we had, and that's Chris's trademark, his logo. So we did that, but then one sad thing was after it got out of the heat treat is it bowed to one side, and so that was, I guess, our first, like, we're like, oh crud, we gotta fix this problem. And Chris did that, but Chris, correct me if I'm wrong because I wasn't here, but he had to burn it in the oven and then also using a torch, and basically just to, try to get that bow out. And that could have happened from a couple different things, either stamping it and not like hammering it back to make sure it was flat, or we had more material on one side than we did the other, and so just it cooled at different temperatures, so bowed to different ways, or I guess it cooled at different speeds. So that was our heat treat.
And at that point, the blade was, besides its final polish and sanding up to a high grit, it was done. No more forging. If you heat it up again, you ruin the heat treat. So the blade was more or less done at that point. The bevel had already been put in. It was pretty much done. We were waiting for the other components to come together at that point.
Yeah, so that's when we started working on our guard and our pommel, and we drilled with a drill press, 3 holes in, 3 holes in one, 4 holes in the other. And the holes couldn't touch each other, and so after we had the holes in them, we had to go with the jeweler's saw and get the metal that was in between out. And then once that was gone, that took a while. I broke 2 blades. It was really sad. It felt really bad. And after those, that was out. We had to take a hand file and file out, just file it smooth so it could slide over our ting, and up to the shoulder and then fit on the end. And that was a really, really exciting day when everything was able to fit together. Because to get it to that point where, even though it was still just a rough square up and then still a square block, and then on the end that was really, really exciting. Because the same day that we finished coring out those 2 things, we finished coring out the handle. And so we did basically the same thing. Process. Yeah, we drilled with a drill press from either side. We met in the middle. And still there's wood in between each hole. And so we had to go in the coping saw and saw all of that out. But there were parts we couldn't get. And we tried to hand file it out. We had tried a rotary saw to get that middle part out, and it would not come out. And so the master, Chris, he forged a different ting on a different blade that was basically the same size. Is that the one he forged? Perfect. That's it. He forged this sucker, which is similar in size.
Pretty darn close.
Basically the same size as our ting.
In like 10 minutes.
Yeah.
It's just like,
it didn't take him long. And we put it in this, you see this, we put it in this little vice grip and burnt it through. And it took 2 times. We heated it up twice and burned it through. and what had previously taken us hours and hours. yeah, it was a couple seconds.
That was like the coolest thing ever.
Yeah, I know, it was awesome. And we have that video.
Cool.
This is how it's been done for thousands of years.
But I guess I don't understand how it. Oh yeah.
So then we had to finish grinding down the blade.
Yep.
And then we had a square or rectangular piece of wood and 2 rectangular pieces of metal that we still needed to shape. So we that night we thought about what we wanted the shape of it all to be, and came back with drawings and started cutting away.
Here are drawings.
Drawings, yes.
And we ended up going with just something pretty simple, but not so simple to make, as we found most things were. And yeah, so we cut them with a bandsaw. We cut the rough shape, and then we finished shaping them on the cutoff wheel, and then finished polishing them and everything, and like putting the bevels on them on the grinder. And when I say we did that, Chris did that last part completely, putting the bevels and grinding them on the grinder, because at that point I didn't care about my fingers. If those things got messed up because they took so long to make, I'd be really, really sad. I was very encouraging and supportive. Not really. I cared more about the garden pommel than Aaron's hands, but not really. I really did care about your hands, I promise. And so, yeah, that was one whole night basically, of doing that, and then shaping the wood, putting, you know, the little grooves in it for fingers, and then, you know, just cutting some of them from each side off, and then
same with the garden pommel. We cut them, and cut them all.
I just love it. Yeah.
And then same process. So at that point, pretty much everything needed to be super grinded.
Yep.
And that was about it.
Yeah. Well,
besides assembling it.
Yeah. Well,
right?
Sort of. I mean, we were here a long time Wednesday. Yeah. So what we did, so kind of the very final things were sanding the handle. So after, you know, we sanded everything down on the grinder, we took it from 60 to 80 to
110 or something.
no 60 to 80 to what, Chris? 150? 120 to 220 to 300 to 400. Yeah. And so that took a long time, and it was hard for me to even see the lines in it that I was even grinding out.
That was with that sandpaper on, with your doing it by hand.
And then I also did the sandpaper on the guard and the pommel as well, after he finished it on the actual grinder, to get rid of some more of those lines. And my hands, I said, Chris, my hands have never been so dirty. Like, even after I took a shower, like, I still couldn't get, like, just from I think sandpapering that steel was in my fingerprints. And so yeah, we took all that down, sanded all that, and then there's 2 pieces of leather on either side of the handle, and those we super glued on there, let that dry, and then you know, cut off, and then grinded, and then drilled through, and that just helps for everything to sit really fleshly and really tightly on there, so there's not a lot of play. It's a word I learned. It doesn't wiggle around a lot. And then let's see, oh my goodness, then there were so many little steps. We we acid etched the guard and the pommel, so we put those in ferric chloride for a little bit, and then we also blued them, which is the same process you would use to blue like a handgun. And so we did that, so that's how they got those colors. And then yeah, and then the whole time, you know, Chris is making, you know, the final edge, and then getting it down to, you know, 600 grit, yeah, on the blade. And then we made our epoxy. We assembled everything, did a trial run, because once it's a 2,000 pound epoxy, and basically once you mix it up, it takes half an hour to dry, but you don't have a lot of time to, you know, mess around. And it got everywhere, so, you know, we're rubbing down with acetone and stuff before it dries, but to make sure it holds everything in there. And I'm trying to think what else.
Put it in the press.
And then we let that dry, and then that night Chris came back and peened the end, and, you know, made sure everything was locked in there. There's a little bit of room, and so you'll see a little piece of copper stuck in that. Yeah, we just put in to make sure it would all hold together and be super secure. And bam, and we have a knife. Simple, walk in the park.
What was it like working with us?
Oh, it's awful. It's torture every minute of the day.
Even when we worked here?
Especially when you weren't here, because I had to live with the anticipation of certain doom. It was a pleasure working with both of you. Made working here a lot less boring than it normally is.
What were your first thoughts? So
My first thoughts?
What did you think when Collyn asked to come see the shop, and then what also did you think when she said that she wanted to make a knife?
My initial thoughts were, yes, I've heard this before. Lots of people say that, and lots of people say they want to come and try and make a knife and stuff like that, but very seldom does anyone actually follow through. And even rarer still is somebody who shows up, follows through, and actually finishes a project. It doesn't happen very often. I've had apprentices that haven't finished an entire project on their own. So, you know, for Collyn to show up and for you to show up, you know, every day and work as hard as you did, it was refreshing, because it doesn't usually happen. Most people don't have that kind of follow through. They show up one day and they work a couple hours and their hands hurt or they get calluses, and, you know, they don't see a finished blade in 2 hours, and they don't want to keep doing it because it's too hard or it takes too long, or it's, you know, I don't know what stops people from following through, but it doesn't happen often. So it was nice to see somebody come and show a lot of enthusiasm and willingness to learn, and willingness to try hard, and to follow through and get it done. It was really nice.
Did you think we would actually finish it on time and it would all work out and we'd have a knife and then in your dad's hands on March 30th?
When we started, I thought, oh yeah, for sure. Like, we're gonna come, we're gonna work hard. Chris said be 30 hours. I was like, we can do that, no problem. And then as I saw how hard it was and how long it was taking, I got kind of nervous that we'd be done on the 30th. And even this week, when, you know, it still just felt very, very incomplete, and not knowing knowing what the process was to finish it, but not really. Yeah, I got kind of nervous. But I don't know. I always had a good feeling because we were, you know, consistent, and we were showing up and we were working hard, and so, yeah, I was very pleasantly kind of just satisfied that we were done. Like, it was I don't know if that really answered your question. But yeah, I was happy we got it done on time, to say the least.
Was there any moment that you were ever frustrated with us, or like doubted us, or didn't, like, we're just like, oh, these kids?
No. No, not at all.
Like, what was there any, like, difficult part in the process for you?
Because we're so unskilled.
No, not really. You know, going in, I knew, I already knew what I was getting into. Because I've done this so many times with people who had never done it before. I'm used to people, like, being new at it, so I know what to expect. So at no point in time was I ever frustrated with you guys because, you know, you exceeded the expectations. Because, like I said, most people don't have that kind of follow-through. You know, or they're not open enough to learning a new skill to realize that they don't know what they're doing, you know, and just embrace the fact that they're learning something new and it's all, you know, fresh steps. A lot of people, they get a little familiar with something and then assume to know more, and then they get frustrated when it goes wrong. But when you don't assume those things and you keep learning and you go, you know, one step at a time, and, you know, and you problem solve, because, you know, things go wrong, but you don't get frustrated. You never got frustrated when things went wrong. We just fixed it, you know? So there was nothing to be frustrated about. There was nothing to, you know, get annoyed with, because you guys were a pleasure to work around. You didn't, you know, you didn't get uppity or snotty or grumpy with me when I corrected you on something.
You got fired a lot.
We did get fired often.
Everybody gets fired. I fire everyone. I fire the dogs. Fire people who don't even work here. But that's just fun. But no, at no point in time was I frustrated. Towards the end, you know, I was a little sad because I knew you guys weren't going to be here anymore, and that was going to be kind of boring, you know. So you have to make one now. But no, you guys were great, and it was a lot of fun, and it was good. It was good to have people in the shop making things and having fun doing it and learning. That's what the shop is all about. So, no.
What surprised you the most about us, or our project, or us working here?
Well, what surprised me the most was that you kept coming back.
Was there ever a time where, like, you were like in your house and, like, they're here? They're actually in my backyard.
The first couple of times I was a little surprised, but, you know, after a while I just kind of embraced it and went with, you know. I'm sure Will was surprised pretty much throughout the entire thing, because he's been around for enough people to, you know, that have flaked out on me and you know, kind of washed out of learning how to do this, that he just doesn't expect to see anyone follow through. Most of the people that know me, who have been around me for a few years doing this, are usually like, oh yeah, another person who said they want to come make a knife, right? You know, but no, after the first couple of times, I'm just like, oh, all right, they might stick with it. Mm-hmm. You know, I'd say once we got to working on the handle, because that's the part that can get more boring for people, because it's so tedious. You know, making the blade is fun because you see it take shape, you know, and it starts to turn into something from a raw piece of steel. It turns into, you know, an object, and you get to see that, and that's the exciting part. That's the part that most people fixate on. They don't fixate on the little parts that go with the knife. They're just like, oh, it's a knife, and they see the blade and like, ooh, that's exciting. And then, you know, they take the block of wood and they're like, well, now you drill holes in here and cut through it and kind of sand away, and, you know, and do it on these little square pieces of steel. You got to do the same thing. They're like, this is boring. Let's see what's happening. Because the handle and all kind of took shape all in one day. But it's all at the end. You know? It's at the end of the tedium. There's a bunch of tedium, and then all of a sudden you have something.
Yeah, it definitely was like back-end loaded on the tedious work. I noticed that.
Is there any part that frustrated you guys?
I was really frustrated when I broke those 2 jeweler saw plates. That made me really upset with myself. Was I ever frustrated?
It's like getting upset when sandpaper goes down.
I don't ever remember being frustrated. I knew it was going to be a long process and that there would be tedious work and things that we did want to do and things that we didn't want to do. But nothing. I don't recall anything ever be like, oh, screw this.
Yeah.
Like, I'm done.
And I loved, I just, because there's so much I feel like I had to learn, I loved all of it. I think it was on Tuesday or Monday when we couldn't get the center out. We had the coping saw, we had done so much and we couldn't get the center out of the wood. That was the first time I was ever like, okay, like I don't know what else to do. Like I can't get this. But yeah, that's the only time I can remember thinking that. But everything else, I really enjoyed doing. I enjoyed learning about it, and then actually, making it.
Crafting the knife was really cool. Getting
Like
to
the
actually
forging
make it.
part?
No,
Yeah.
no, just like the whole process.
Yeah.
But learning about the process and about metal and about what to do and what not to do and using all the different tools, that was also equally rewarding.
Happy birthday, Dad. I wish I could be there and celebrate with you, but I can't, and so I love you, and I hope it was a great 50th. Bye.
Learn how to make stabbies.
Yes.
Make a machete on your own.
Learn to make machete. You like machete? We make machete.
We make machete today.
Machete good for you. Protect house, yes.
Is that a movie?
No, that's right now.
Oh.
That just
I
happened.
literally thought you were quoting
It's a
something.
movie now.
Just quoting me.
Perfect.
Do you want to make machete?
I did not catch on. I was like, oh, I haven't seen that movie. Because I trust you.
First birthday.
Okay.
Are both your butt cheeks on?
Yeah, are yours? No?
Kinda.
Nope. Here.
Are they still on? Are your both still?
No, it's okay.
Okay, well, I was on half anyways.
Are you good?
Alright, so
I feel really comfortable right here.
Okay, are you sure?
Yep. Yep. Are you good?
Oh,
Oh,
doggy!
hey, puppy. Hey, Lisa.
We
Look,
on-
puppy.
we on
Look,
film.
puppy. You're on film.
Oh my
You're on-
God.
Oh, my goodness. Hey, Connor. Hey. 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 Hey, puppy. Ooh, that knocked us off this.
Alright, out of the shot. Do it out.
That would be actually really funny.
Yeah. Oh,